So Phil, thank you for coming in today. As I said over the phone, sometimes it's easy for us to answer questions over the phone, but other times it's easier to have an in-person meeting. And I thought your situation, being that it's getting a little bit complicated, so it seemed,
it is.
Would be best for us to have a meeting in person.
Yeah, it's getting really complicated. I have a lot of people telling me what to do. Nobody, I can't say nobody's helping, but I'm not getting the kind of help that I really need. It's my responsibility to sort all of this out and do what's best for my mother, but no, I don't know exactly anymore what's possible. What do you suggest that I do? What services can you give me?
Maybe we can start by just reviewing the situation again and what some of the challenges that you're facing.
Okay, so exactly how many times do I have to repeat all of this? I spent an hour on the phone with someone, then I talked with you again. You know what? Forget about it. What do you need to know?
I know, and I know you discussed this over the phone, and I do have notes from New York Connect staff from your last call to us. But it really would be helpful for us to just briefly to review your situation.
Okay, well, my mother's lived in her house since she was born. Parents bought it a couple of years before she was born. She's determined to live there until she dies. She's been widowed now probably about 20 years. And for the first 15 years or so, that was just fine. She was taking care of herself. I was coming in, a couple of times a week. I was doing more and more for her. I was doing small repairs, getting her groceries, taking her to family events, such as they are, and just stopping by. So I do have 3 siblings. They all live out of the area. They all have children. They all have jobs. They would visit on holidays. My sister in particular would call her on the phone. Things like that. But pretty much it was left to me to take care of things.
Okay, so can you share with me what has changed?
Oh, that's easy. It's diabetes and dementia. Well, it's not easy, but those are the things that really made the difference. So our family history is riddled with type 2 diabetes. My mother tried to ignore that. She was like, not going to let it run my life, and it's going to happen anyway. And that was fine up until the amputation. And then it was sort of like, no, that's pretty sobering. That meant life had to change. It also meant that then there was wound care that she couldn't always manage for herself. So it changed things for me too. I started being involved in that, which meant I was visiting just about every day. So then it's an interesting thing. It's funny, but in a bizarre sort of way what happened. They talk about the classic thing with Alzheimer's disease, people not paying their bills. Well, what happened was that her phone and her cable got turned off. It wasn't because the bills weren't being paid per se. I had set her bills up for automatic payments. And what I didn't realize was the bank got bought out. And so then she must have gotten a notice that she needed to change the account, but she had stopped opening her mail. And so 6 months later, everything got shut off because she hadn't been paying her bills. And I didn't know that she wasn't opening her mail because while she wasn't opening it, she was also throwing it out. And so there was no pile of bills unpaid sitting when I would come into the house. So I just didn't know anything. So took her to see her doctor, went to see a specialist, and they said, yep, it was Alzheimer's disease, and that it was advanced and progressing, and but that she could still live on her own, but that sort of she was going to need a lot of help. That kind of really changed things pretty dramatically. I started looking around. I realized there were things that weren't being taken care of. I talked with the neighbors a little bit. They had been noticing the changes. They were kind of covering for her, taking care of things for her that she wasn't taking care of for herself. They were all really pleased that I was coming more and taking care of things, but nobody wanted to tell me that's what was going on. So that's really, and so now, those things just continue to accumulate in terms of the needs that she has.
Okay. So does she live alone?
She lives alone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how often are you there?
Well, as I said, it used to be I came a couple of days a week. Now I'm there every day. I'm there a couple of times every day. I live about 45 minutes away. I live right by where I work. My son's in high school right there, so it's not a moment to move. She doesn't want to move, and so it's not a moment for me to move. Maybe at another time. So I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I go over there. This is what I was doing. I would get her out of bed, breakfast, get her dressed, sit her down in front of the TV, give her her crosswords. She likes to do crosswords and those word puzzles and stuff like that. I'd go to work, and then I'd come. I had somebody, a neighbor, Lil. I got her to come in during the day. That she would come, make lunch for her, stay for a couple of hours, and I would just pay a little something for doing that each day. But then that started to change as well, because then the wound care was becoming more complicated. And also, during the night, my mother started to get incontinent, and Lil really wasn't interested in being part of that, and I understand that. But also, it was getting complicated for me. There are some things a son shouldn't be doing for his mother, and so what I've done now is I have a nurse's aide that comes in. Again, it's somebody from the neighborhood. And she comes in the mornings, gets my mother up, gets her changed, all those kinds of things, and then helps to get her to bed at night. But I still have to show up because, people's lives have their own issues, and if the aide calls off, my mother still has needs, so I got to be there to be sure that everything's taken care of. I just don't have to stay as long. But I actually don't feel that it feels very much different. I still feel the responsibility is all mine.
And have you thought about having your mother move into your house?
Well, we tried that at one point. She really protested against it. I got her to come down. I kind of tricked her. I told her that she was just coming for a few days, and then a few days turned into a week and a half, and then one night she got up in the middle of the night and took a walk home. I found her 5 miles away walking. So she was pretty clear this was unacceptable. She wanted to be in her own house. So I haven't tried that since.
And what about other family members? Do they offer any help?
Well, as I said, my 2 brothers live on the West Coast. I think I said that. They never had a great relationship with our parents. And so, they call. They've been home a couple of times, but it's not part of their lives. My sister Helen, she lives a good distance away as well, but it's drivable. She comes sometimes on the holidays. She'll stay for a long weekend. I'm not going to say it's not some help, because when she's here for the weekend, then I don't have to be there on the weekend. I can stay home, I can sleep in a little bit, I can take care of other things. It happens that things tend to go well on the weekends when she's there, and so then she tells me I'm exaggerating the problem. She doesn't know why I'm so stressed by the whole thing, and I need to I must be driving my mother crazy, all the things that siblings say to each other. And so when you're criticized, it doesn't feel like a lot like help, but there is some help, because at least I get to break that weekend.
It sounds like this is very stressful for you.
Yeah, it is. I feel like, well, let me think about this. I do feel a lot of criticism rather than help, particularly from my family members. They like to tell me what to do. They keep saying how much she wants to stay in the house. I know that. It doesn't help to put that pressure on me. And also they think that, I've always handled things, so they expect me to handle this. They question my spending of her money when I try to, I wanted to pay for the aid out of her own money. And so it just got too complicated, so now I'm paying for that. It's not worth the fight. So it's become overwhelming. My finances are overstretched. It's affecting me at work. I got a performance review coming up. I know they're going to talk to me about tiredness. Yeah, I am tired when I get to work. They're going to talk to me about my timekeeping. Yeah, not much choice. If the aide doesn't show or is late, I got to stay there to be sure that she's going to show up. Yeah, my son pretty much takes care of himself. And, as a parent, I got to be concerned, is that all good? I don't actually know what really goes on in his life day to day, and sort of don't feel good about that as a parent either. But I just feel really overwhelmed by everything and doing the best that I can, but sort of conscious too that this is not going away. She could live a long time like this, but her needs are just going up, and sort of what am I going to do?
Well, it sounds like it's a lot, and obviously there are some things that need to change. There certainly are supports that you and your mother can benefit from. So why don't we take a moment and just take a step back, if you will, and why don't you let me know what you would really like to see happen?
Okay, well, no more diabetes or dementia would be great. Okay, I know that's not possible, but that's really what would make the big difference.
And having said that, then if dementia and diabetes are continuing, what would you like to see?
I'd like my mother to be able to live in her house safely for as long as possible. I'm working to keep her there, but I'm increasingly concerned that it's not safe anymore.
Okay, and is there anything else that would help you?
Well, I'd like to feel less stressed. I'd like to spend more time with my son. I'd like my siblings to offer more support, but I'd like to feel that I just did the right thing by my mother.
Okay, and those are all good things. Let's talk a little bit about some of the services that you're already using and some of the supports that you have. You mentioned neighbors.
Yeah, no, I can't say I'm very lucky. My mother is very lucky that sort of she's in a neighborhood where people care about her. John lives next door. He's 75. For years, he's cut our grass. He shovels the snow on the sidewalk. Now he sort of takes the garbage cans in and out. But he's 75. He's had some heart issues. I just don't know how long he can keep doing that. So that'll be something else that'll get added on. He doesn't take any money, which is a stress in itself. Like I would prefer to sort of be able to do something. I try to take care of him at the holidays. And he's usually pretty gracious about that. So then, as I mentioned, I had someone in the neighborhood, Lil, who I would pay to come in and sit with my mother at times, but it became too much for her. She wasn't willing to do any of the personal care, and I understand that. That wasn't what I had asked her to do. I asked her just to come in and be, company and sort of make something for lunch for the two of them. So I don't really use Lil that much anymore because she's always really concerned, what if something happens? And then there's a nurse's aide, Jen. She lives down the street. She only works part-time for an agency, so I pay her to provide care. She comes in the morning for a couple of hours. She comes in the evening for a couple of hours, takes care of the personal care needs. I think that's the term you use. And she sort of does the food and, she helps me cleaning up the house, stuff like that. So she's very good, but her own life's a bit dysfunctional, so I'm always the backup.
Okay, and so your siblings, don't they get involved at all?
Not really. Helen comes to visit for a long weekend. I think I said that, usually on a couple of holidays. It can be a break because she stays there. She doesn't really believe it's dementia. She thinks that my mother's problems are normal aging. And that kind of takes away from the sense of being helped as well. That sort of when people say, well, no, it's all in your head. And again, sort of the siblings on the West Coast, I don't really hear from them much.
And what do you think your mother would want?
She'd want to live and die in her own house and to be able to eat ice cream every night, to be honest. I'm not kidding. That her needs, her desires are pretty simple.
Okay, and you mentioned you were using an aid and paying for it yourself, and you rely on neighbors. How's that working?
Well, I think it works pretty good. It's always easier when the people are involved are still people that my mother actually remembers and recognizes. Although she's terrible with names, she gets people mixed up, she forgets they were there. But I still think it kind of works. The real problem is I just can't afford this. I'm concerned now that I'm going to need someone to stay overnight. How am I going to afford that?
So there are a couple of tools that we can use to better understand your situation, to be able to figure out what your preferences are and your values that should guide us in the choices among all of the services that we will look at and consider. In all that, we want to make sure that we focus on both what is best for your mother and what is best for you. There is no, as you know, no one plan, no one set plan of services that works for everyone. We want to understand what works best for your situation and for your mother. We call that person-centered. And we are trying to consider all of the options that are possible and really come up with something that you feel will meet your needs. Mm-hmm. With diabetes and dementia both being involved, we also want to not just consider what works today, but we want to make sure that we are also looking at some of the decisions that you may have to make in the future.
Okay. Yep.
And what approach
they're
you
coming
take.
Pretty fast.
Yes. Does that sound good to you?
I'm willing to try it. I just don't know if anything will work except doing what I'm doing.
Thanks for agreeing to try.
Okay.
Let's start by discussing what's really important to you.
Yep.
You said it was important for you and for your mother for her to stay in her own home.
Yep.
It sounded like it was also important for you to spend time with your son.
Yes.
And to reduce the amount of caregiving you are already doing. What else do you think is important?
Well, I think it's really important that my mother has good care.
Okay, well, let's add that to the list. So there were 4 things that you mentioned were important to you, Phil. That your mother stay in her own home, spending more time with your son,
Yep.
Reducing time spent caregiving,
Yep.
and ensuring your mother has good care.
Yep.
Does that
Those
sound
are all,
right?
Those are all right.
Okay. And when we look and think about each one of those, do any have a higher level of importance on a scale of 1 to 10? How would you rate them?
They're all 10s.
Okay. Well, let's think a little bit more
Okay.
as we look at each one of them. Do you have a higher level of importance for any one of them?
I guess my mother staying in her home and getting good care, they would both be 10s. My son would be a 9. As much as I complain about it, sort of me spending less time caregiving, it's probably a 5.
Okay. Well, getting good care and staying at home, are they really equal to you?
Well, the problem with that is if I say getting good care is more important, then I have to agree that she can move out of her house. I'm not ready to do that.
Okay. Well, it's not about giving up, and you raise a good point, Phil. It's not enough to have ideas about the services we want. It's also about how ready we are for any changes that we may need to make in the future, and that's hard.
Yep.
I think any plan, particularly one that addresses your mother's changing needs, there are going to be questions about how ready we are about the new approaches. Do you think there will ever be a time when you would consider moving your mother out of her home?
I actually think about it every day, but I always conclude that I'm not ready to do that. I know it's coming, but no, I'm not ready.
Well, I can appreciate your honesty, and yes, I know it's really a hard thing to consider. So let's think about this a little differently. What would you give? What would give you peace of mind in this situation?
Knowing that I'd done everything I could, knowing that I had respected her wishes to stay in her home, it would really help if I felt like my siblings appreciated how tough all of this is, how easy their roles have been because of what I'm doing. And it would also give me peace of mind to find a way to show my son that he's important too. Yeah, these are things I think about.
Okay, and what would you say doesn't work? What steps would mean that you would not have peace of mind?
Oh, that's easy. Putting her in a nursing home, taking her out of the house, not feeling I did the right thing. I couldn't. No.
Okay, so let's now move to thinking through what are the critical challenges and what are your preferences for how to meet those challenges.
Well, what about services? Can't you just tell me what's going to work and sign us up?
Well, I want to be sure. I want to be sure that any services are what you want and what your mother would want. And that whatever we come up with offers peace of mind. So if it's okay with you, let's talk about the challenges and the preferences.
Okay.